You're listening to Dirty Feet, a podcast from No More Radio.
Vous écoutez le podcast Dirty Feet sur les ondes de No More Radio.
Hosted by,
animé par
Allison Burns,
JD Papillon,
et Stéphanie Morin-Robert.
Stay tuned.
We're gonna move you.
So Patrick Lloyd Brennan is a fellow graduate from the Department of Contemporary Dance of Concordia University here in Montreal. He's an emerging choreographer who has trained in ballroom, musical theater, jazz, ballet, and contemporary dance. You might remember him from the 2010 edition of Danse Buissonnière, which is, of course, the collection of works that Tangente produces every year that kind of features people coming out of dance programs and puts their work on stage. It's a nice springboard for a lot of young artists. He's also produced work for Festival Transamérique, Tangente, Studio 303, Sala Rosa, Nuit Blanche. He's also had two past dance companies, The Department and Vos Enfants Terribles, with which he produced dance and I would say performance work as well, kind of on the performance art side of things. You may also remember him from Dance Animal. He was Dance Poodle. Dance Animal is, of course, a comedy dance / theater troupe that was around and kind of blew Montreal away and a little while ago there. So we're going to be talking to Patrick today about a specific project that's coming up. But first, I want to just say hi, Patrick. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's you're a person we've invited in frequently, and we're happy to finally get you on Dirty Feet. So that's super exciting for us. So you were the concepteur of this dance video that we're going to talk about in a little bit, and you've also brought in Kerwin Barrington, who was your assistant on the project, correct?
That's right. Yep.
And Kerwin, you're also a graduate from the Concordia Contemporary Dance Program. And as far as I understand, you currently teach dance, and you're also working on an ELAN-funded project that is doing choreographic workshops for rural areas in Quebec. Yeah?
Yes, exactly.
So we're going to be talking about this dance video project today. It's called You Can Take the Streets and Rule Them Because We Are of the Sky. So nice big title there. It's a 13-minute work, and it's going to be presented by Rendez-vous du Cinéma Québécois. And as far as I understand it, it's a dance work that features several dancers dancing on their own in specific Montreal locations.
That's right, yeah.
And this was kind of a spur-of-the-moment creation, and I'm curious, you were kind of given an opportunity, and you took it very quickly. Would you say that was the impetus or inspiration for the work, or did you have this concept of these kind of, this little love letter of Montreal in the back of your mind, stewing away for a while there?
I think it was really Eddie Menz, Eduardo Menz, who's the director of the film and producer. It was really an idea that he had, was really looking at. He wanted to experiment with dance. He wanted to experiment, with video. And so he sort of approached me because actually he ended up getting his hands on some really fantastic equipment for 3 days. He said, I've always wanted to work with you. Let's put something together. And so from there, we just started getting to talking a little bit about protests and about movements and the Arab Spring, the Occupy movement, the Printemps Arabe that was going on here, and just sort of the energy and that was sort of coming out, I think, even within our generation, I would say. And he wanted to look at how that could be brought or turned into movement. And that's sort of where things started. So yeah, definitely spur of the moment in terms of we've got this equipment for 3 days, let's put something together. And that was sort of the kickoff for it, I think.
How were the locations selected? Because was it kind of like, oh, let's go here and just really spur of the moment, or did you guys have certain planning around location and whatnot?
Yeah, we had about 2 weeks to search for different locations that would work, not only for the dancers but for the camera. And so Eddie went out on his bike and found all these awesome spots. And then we were also, had lots of discussions about dancers and who we were going to choose. And then it was probably, I would say, about a 2-day process of matching dancers with locations. That was really a key moment in it, I think. But yeah, there was definitely some thought put into it before. We did have a couple of last minute changes though, on the shoot days, just because things didn't work or we didn't have access to places or, so those were actually kind of interesting moments that we had to sort of negotiate.
I imagine in this kind of process that your subjects are taking a lot of control of the content. If, you're throwing it together in a couple of days, you got to trust these people. Are these all people that you've worked with before, all these dancers?
No, quite a few of them, a number of them. But some of them were people that Eddie has worked with before, or just people that he's always wanted to work with. And it's also something that's really important to me to work with not only trained dancers, but non-dancers as well, who have an inkling towards movement. So for me, it was really important to put together a team of people that would bring out, they would bring different things to the table. And I think that was also, part of matching them with the locations and with it being in the streets sort of thing, is really keeping that real person alive, not just seeing a dancer on the streets, was really seeing people interact with the streets and with the location.
Now, looking at the list of dancers, there is a very wide range of aesthetics, especially movement aesthetics in them. Some of them are non-dancers, quote unquote. Some of them are dancers with a much more classical background. Some are much more contemporary breakdance influenced. There's a burlesque artist also. Like, how did it feel to, especially when it came to the editing, to bring all of that content together in a way that where there was this through line? Even with all of those different people, all of those different locations. I mean, Montreal is a city. It's a very vibrant city, and you can see the locations you chose were probably very different also. So how did you create this through line for the film and the editing, and even in the conceptualization when you were talking to dancers?
I think it really was... just as a side note, I was not part of the editing process when it comes to the actual video, which it's really interesting. I'm going to see it for the first time as everybody else, which is really scary, but really interesting. So I think that through line really had to come from the original sort of concept and the sort of set of restraints and rules that were built from the beginning. I don't know if maybe Kerwin wants to speak to that a little bit.
Just because I danced in it as well, so I could speak from interpretation point of view. I think it had to do with the context of what was going on and the fact that everyone had the same rules, and those rules were, from my point of view, you're starting at point A and you're moving towards point B in one swoop. And while you're doing that, there's a guy with a big, huge camera and a sound guy and Patrick and someone else was there too, helping, because the equipment was quite big and a little bit awkward, I think. So they were following you as you were going from this point A to point B. So I think just having that context every time created a through line. Also with Patrick's guidance and the way that he was sort of setting up what was happening.
When creating work site specifically, there's a few challenges that come into play, not only as a dancer but also as a choreographer. How was juggling, everything from weather to temperature, the daylight? Was it a constant struggle to okay, the sun's coming down, let's get this?
It really was.
I'm interested in knowing about these struggles.
Absolutely. I think we got hit with everything that you could imagine. We got hit with rain from the first answer, which was Kerwin. It was rain. It was trying to also just take care of this equipment as well. Just to mention, it was a big steady cam, $20,000 camera, huge thing. Oh, so it was always being worried about that. Time as well, we set out to 3 different locations on the first day, 4 on the second, and 3 on the last day. So definitely time, things that I had never really had to worry about in terms of creating, being in the studio, you can just keep going and going. But with this, it was, we've got 2 hours to do this and go. I think that was kind of the theme of the weekend.
Especially with lighting and all these things that were exciting for us. I think for myself as a dancer, to have to deal with the weather just added this whole nother layer, and the different where the sun was and all of that was interesting, but I think technically was creating challenges for the shot.
Now, Kerwin, since you had to dance in the rain, did you have this big Volmont moment of like, yes, I'm living like the Peanut Dream, I'm dancing in the rain?
I would say the whole experience was kind of like that. And interestingly, it was this rush of wanting to explore my space, wanting to claim it. And then because it was a rush of point A to point B, and all this repeating it over and over and over to get the best take, it just evolved, into this really. I felt elation the whole time. I was just on this amazing rush, and the rain. I mean, of course, and it's in the city, so there's all this natural element coming in there as well.
Movement and life around that, right?
That's it, exactly.
Yeah, the city doesn't stop just because you're doing a film, right?
Right.
Just to explain that dancer joke moment there, that was the title of a show that the Pina Bausch Company showed at Théâtre Maisonneuve in November. It's a very famous work, and in the piece there's a giant rock on stage, and for I would say like the majority of the work, it's raining on stage basically, and the dancers are splashing in the water, and it's really euphoric and wonderful.
And to go back to that point A to point B, that is a very specific and very interesting choice. Because when we think about choreography, we're not going to think so much about geolocation of going from this place to this place. It's going to be much more about like imbuing or embodying something, or we don't think about it so much about a transition from one place to another. But with something that is in situ, I guess it makes sense to go in that direction. What made you choose to use that as the core concept of the instructions you would give to your dancers?
I think I wanted to create something that was simple in terms of structure, to sort of, and by having a very simple structure of you've got to start here and end there, it opens the dancer up to making choices and to having lots of freedom of how to get from point A to point B. There's countless ways that you can do that, but at the same time, there's also a bit of vulnerability in that, because I think, as dancers or as choreographers, we always want to create what's going to look best. We always want to be the best at it. We want to look good. And so by allowing this sort of freedom and saying, well, this is all you've got to do, the dancer is all of a sudden, I feel like, put on the spot to a certain extent, and they've got to negotiate things for themselves. And then what I wanted to do was then come in, with every take, come in and sort of chip away at that and shape it into something that was going to work. To go back to what you were saying earlier, like to go back to that general through line, to make sure that it was all going to connect and the pieces were going to come together at the end.
Did someone decide to take it to its most simplistic level and really decide to just walk from point A to point B?
In the end, no. They definitely, that was, what a lot of the performers, that was the first step that they took. And it was also just for, as the choreographer as well, just walking through the space. For me, it was my first time going through the space a lot of the times as well, and walking through with the camera and figuring things out. But it's definitely the starting point. But from there, I really think that the performers really sort of grabbed onto it and really went with it every time, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. And I think would then tap into their own backgrounds and their own signature ways of moving. I know for myself I did. I eventually, just because we were doing it so many times and I was just really enjoying it, that I just let go at one point and trusted that, I was doing what Patrick had envisioned and just went with it. Yeah.
With yourself, Corinne, and also a lot of the other performers in the film, a lot of the names, these are people who are not only dancers but also choreographers. Do you feel that selection is something that helped you really trust these people and having to make those quick decisions on the spot? That kind of side of understanding structure and understanding maybe... Yeah, I'm interested in knowing what you think of that and that selection of artists, because a lot of them are choreographers also.
It's funny, I hadn't thought about that at all until you just said that, but it's very interesting. And I wonder if that's also just a thing that I naturally look for in the dancer as well. I'd never even noticed that. I think it definitely helped. Especially, for those, there was the last shots of the day, the last performance of the day, when it was really like tight and we've got to get this before the sun goes down. Where there wasn't as much time for in between each take for me to really go in and help them out. It was, you've got to make a choice. They've got to go. And I think that definitely played into it.
Yeah, I would say, and also on the first day when there were a couple times where carrying that camera around, going downstairs, actually the two that first day, we were going downstairs and we were only 5 people. And so sometimes, Patrick had to assist in the technical side of it. And so I was there working with the dancers. And I would say that I helped them a little bit, but mostly they were having to make choices after the initial sort of preparation for them and the walking through and the couple sort of takes to kind of get into it. Then they felt it was kind of like they didn't have a choice. It was like, just go. So then they're making choices themselves. Yeah.
And Patrick, you mentioned vulnerability and being in that, not only having to kind of be like, all right, well, it's raining and I can't control anything about that, just kind of letting it go, but also the vulnerability of having never seen this film and something you choreographed and as a choreographer, we're all choreographers around the table here, and it's really about shifting the focus of the audience, and that's what we do. And now that role is almost taken away from you.
Totally.
How are you dealing with that?
Well, I think because it's something that we're generally speaking not so used to as choreographers, for there to be such a long period of time between the preparation and the actual performance. But what's kind of been interesting with this process is that there was preparation, there was on the spot working through it, and then it was really the day of the actual shooting was in many ways the performance. And now there's been this almost year and a half period, and now it's like there's going to be another performance of it all, and it's it's totally, at this point, it's out of my hands. But I mean, having worked with Eddie and Santiago, who did most of the editing, I just trust them, and there's a lot of, it's interesting to be collaborating with people, and you've got to trust. And it was something that was really part of the process in terms of actually shooting, and then it's just carried on since then. I
think that also relates to the people that you chose also. So absolutely, Eddie is trustworthy to, he's a very creative and very, as soon as you walk on set with him, you feel instantly at ease and comfortable and like you're in his hands and it's okay. But also, I think that's maybe part of why you chose those people, because you trust what they're going to bring also, yeah.
With your performance work and some of the things that you've presented for Bouche DC over the years that I've seen, where the audience is a very active part of the performance and their reaction is what makes it. I'm curious how you feel. We're talking about this presentation of a work that you can't touch anymore, and it's not going to be affected by the audience reaction whatsoever. How do you feel about that?
I mean, I think that, going back to even just thinking about the last question you just answered is really, I think that for me, the performance really was that on those 3 days was really the shooting. And in that sense, the audience was the streets. It sounds like it's a silly thing to say, I think, but it was really interesting, just to work with solo dancers, because usually I also do group work as well. And so it's about the interaction between the performers. And with this, it was really just the dancer walking through the space or walking through the streets. And so I think that the streets kind of became the audience for me in that way. And so I think I've let it go. I've let it go. And I mean, I can't wait for the lights go down and be sitting and see. Yeah. I think there will still be a reaction from the audience. Yeah, it'll just be a little bit different this time around.
Well, for sure, the audience. I meant like the video wouldn't react to the audience.
Well, just from dancing in it, it was really interesting to be cutting the space, to be cutting the, creating the dance. You're cutting the space, and behind me, in the movement I was doing, every once in a while I would turn around and I would see this following me, this guy with the big, and with the big camera, and the audience was following me. Like usually the audience is stuck, even in site-specific work. It's very rare. It happens that the audience is following you, but they were literally coming with me on this path that I was going on every time. And so I don't know how that's going to translate to sitting in a room with the lights closed and still coming with me, but in this kind of setup,
Yeah. Okay, so the interesting thing here is, and we'll all admit it, that we kind of all lead double lives, so we juggle a lot to get by and to make it possible to do what we love. And anyway, I'm just going to say, Patrick is studying law. And I think it's such an interesting thing, and it makes me realize that having a film of your work is so rich because of that. Right now you're doing all of these things, you're studying, you're going to class, and you're going to have a film that's going to be seen. And I think it, more and more, I guess we can realize how much of an important tool that is to not have to always physically be there, and to kind of let your work live on. Is this something that you guys are interested in doing again? Is film work or working with a camera something you'd like to continue doing?
I think absolutely. For me, just to speak to the law school, I'm so excited for some of my friends from law school to come and see this, because it'll be, it's like they'll just see this whole other side of me, I think, in many ways. But yeah, absolutely, I would love to do more film and video work. I think it just brings up so many different challenges that you have to face as a choreographer, and things you have to integrate into your process. And I think that you really grow as a choreographer, as an artist, by working on something that's going to be captured. It's going to be there forever. It's gonna, you can't go in and make notes after the first screening, and it is what it is. So.
Also, because we know that dance is ephemeral, and we're always kind of struggling with that idea, and it gives a bit of credibility to it in some ways. It sounds kind of odd to say that, but just in my students and the people that I've spoken to about it, it seems like all of a sudden they've perked up and said, "Oh, this is cool, a film." Like my daughter said, "Is it going to be on Netflix?" But it gives a bit of because it
becomes a constant in a way.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is interesting, because a lot of your work, and this has kind of been mentioned before, but a lot of your work is based on this ephemeral, and it is based on performance, very much so. Mm-hmm. And from, granted, the limited selection of your work I've seen, but you do tend towards the performative much more than the dancey, quote unquote. Mm-hmm. How did it feel to go back to work that was much more dancey than it was performative and theatrical? Like, you yourself as an artist, did it bring back memories, or like what kind of impact did it have on you to be like, we're focusing on movement right now?
I think that as much as we were focusing on movement, it was, I feel like things were just sort of substituted in terms of when I do sort of create these very theatrical pieces. I always try and sort of set up or design an experience where I'm really trying to control or manipulate an environment. So the space, costume, sort of to a certain extent, the performer's emotions and that sort of thing. And I think in many ways I still went back to the same approach. Being able to assist and be a part of choosing the locations, choosing the dancers, the general look, the general theme of things, in many ways was very similar to the process that I've gone through in the past. It's just that the end result isn't this sort of flashy, fun, performance. But in many ways, I think that it was kind of this very similar process as to what I've gone through in the past.
Yeah, I would agree. I've danced for Patrick many times, and he actually does almost always pass through movement, actually. There is always a very strong movement direction, and that it's usually very simple, and that simplicity, again, often brings out this really somehow extravagant,
Yeah, I think it's also, I like to separate the performance experience from the audience's experience as well. Where really my goal as a choreographer throughout the creative process is to really create moments for the performers to engage with the work, or just to really just live the experience with or without an audience. And then my attention also then goes to the audience. Okay, how am I gonna mess with that? Is usually my approach. But I think so in this way, it was really just isolating. Okay, I just have to make sure that my performers are really going to live this out in the short time that they had, and the 2-hour block or 3-hour block that they had. They went through a process that sometimes would take months, that I would go through with, if we were preparing something for the theater or for the stage.
From this discussion, I'm having a sense that this work is very much about the urban experience. And the location the locations chosen were very important to the whole process, to the product that you ended up with. What is your relationship in this film to the city of Montreal? And it's a living city. A city is never just stuck in time, but there's people moving around, there's cars passing by. How did you bring those elements into the film? And for you, was it important to show that city as a living organism?
That's a big question. Yes, it was definitely important to keep the city alive. But what I think was, I'm just thinking back to some moments, what was interesting is that we also at some, in certain times we had to close off certain parts of the city, or just, we had to sort of suspend reality in a way. I don't know if that's a broad statement, but I'm thinking too, when we were shooting with Abram, we were shooting around Lucien Lallier Metro and the sort of pathway into the Bell Center and the train station. And, there's people walking through, there's people coming up the stairs. And at a certain point, I think we really started to get that clean shot where no one was passing through. And at a certain point, it was, this is going to happen. This is a city. This is a busy part of the city. And, the characters that have now become a part of that section, I'm hoping that they've stayed in the film, in the video. We don't know. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I'm born and raised Montrealer and love my city. So I think it's definitely was something that deep down, subconsciously I wanted to be a part of the film in many ways. And some of the locations are just phenomenal. They're fantastic. So yeah, I'm really excited to see how it
I think really concretely also when we were dancing and we were in that space, it was just happening. The city was becoming part of it because we were really there and really dancing on it and with it and in it, It just was happening concretely,
Are you guys aware if they kept the soundscape? I know that you have music in the film, but the soundscape of the actual recording, was there live sound that was being recorded?
Yes, there was. I'm not sure how much of it has been integrated in. I know that there's also some sound and audio clips from protests, from newscasts, that sort of thing, and a mix of music as well. So we will see.
Yeah, and we have a clip of Sepultura that's going to be included in the video, which did you just find out when we asked you for music, or did you already know that this was a piece?
I knew there was a piece from, it's actually the piece that's used in the trailer.
Okay,
which was the
cat's
first
out
glimpse.
Of the bag.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was the first sort of glimpse that I got of the video.
Great.
So, yeah.
So we'll play this slightly aggressive track and get a feel for perhaps what some of the video is going to be like.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so you've told us over and over that the editing process is out of your hands. So the music selection and whatnot is somebody else's choices that are being made. Did you give any guidance in that respect? Did you say this is what I have in mind, or this is kind of the feel that should be happening, or was it more of a discussion, or nothing at all?
I think more of a discussion. I think informally, some of the choices that were made, I definitely have had an influence on. I think all of the performers, everybody, I think really played a part in it, because it really started out as this sort of experiment, and we had a general idea of what we wanted it to look like in the end. But I think that shifted and changed so much throughout the process. And I think that Eddie in general is just, he's the captain of the ship. He's gonna keep control of everything and make sure that it all works in the end. So
yeah. I think this camera following you, moving forward swiftly, created a kind of violent in some of the work, in some of the solos, a violent and aggressive reaction to that pressure behind you. So I don't know if that influenced it, or if it's just all kind of in the pot.
Which also kind of works well hand in hand with the sounds you were mentioning of protests and news.
Yeah.
And
that's it. Yeah.
Is there any sound on set that other than the soundscapes? Did you use any music for rhythm purposes or whatnot?
We didn't. I didn't impose that on any of the dancers. I don't know.
Karen had something in her earphones.
Well, I had because I was the first one, so there was a lot of setup going on and a lot of technical things that I didn't understand, and a lot of time. And so I was trying to stay pumped and trying to stay warm and stay engaged. So yeah, I was listening to Rihanna, which did create this kind of pulse in me that helped. Yeah, I don't listen to her all the time, but...
So this episode, we've been speaking with Patrick Lloyd Brennan and Kerwin Barrington. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And the video project that we were talking about, it's a video dance piece called You Can Take the Streets and Rule Them Because We Are of the Sky. And it's being presented as a part of the festival Rendez-vous du Cinéma Québécois in Montreal. The whole festival runs the 19th to the 28th of February. This piece in particular is actually going to be part of a showcase of the best films from all genres. So congratulations on that. Those are bragging rights right there. So it's Programme Choix du Chef 1. So the whole evening is 70 minutes long. This work is 13 minutes. So you're going to see 8 films altogether. It's like between $9.50 or $11.50 depending on
Your status.
Your status in society. And it's on the 21st at 10:30 at the Cinémathèque Québécoise, Salle Claude Jutras. So thank you very much. And you're gonna leave us with a few words of wisdom, as far as I understand.
Okay, so this is a quote that Eddie gave us, and it's by the feminist anarchist Emma Goldman. And she once wrote, "If I can't dance, I don't want to be a part of your revolution." And I think it's very apropos.
Dirty Feet was previously recorded at the Montreal Improv Theatre and is currently recorded out of Mainline Theatre. Thanks, dudes.
Dirty Feet est produit et animé par,
produced and hosted by Alison Burns,
JD Papillon,
et Stéphanie Moret-Robert.
You can find out more about our show at nomoreradio.com, follow us on Twitter at Dirty Feet, and find us on Facebook at Dirty Feet Podcast.
Vous pouvez écouter tous nos épisodes sur notre site web ou vous pouvez vous abonner également sur iTunes à notre podcast.
Listen to past episodes on website or subscribe to the podcast on iTunes.
While you're there, be sure to give us a rating and or leave a comment to help us spread the word.
Tune in next week for a whole new show.